Welcome to another edition of the PhinManiacs.com podcast. I am your host, Louis Sung, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Chad Ronnebaum. And with us tonight, for at least the first half an hour at least, is Max Himmelreich of the Deep End Miami. Gentlemen, it's nice to have you with us.
Yep, good to be here again.
Good to be here, Louis.
So we're gonna talk about the Houston Texans. We're gonna talk about the New England Patriots, and of course the ever-growing legend of Dan Campbell. But before we do that, I just want to take a moment and just say thank you to Scott Stone and the Miami Dolphins organization for hosting us, and several other websites for the Web Weekend experience. It was an incredible thing to deal with. It was an incredible thing to go through. Got to talk to Dan Campbell, Rashard Matthews, Matt Darr, among others. So, and of course, we got to go through the locker room and all that lovely stuff with the tours and all that. It was an amazing experience. And, of course, we got to watch the Miami Dolphins beat down the Houston Texans. And, of course, that's always a lot of fun. And it seems to me that it's actually kind of ironic because the last Web Weekend, the Dolphins beat the Chargers 37-0, and then, once again, the websites show up and it's another blowout. So maybe what needs to happen is that Scott Stone needs to tell all the websites to come down more often. So maybe that
every week they need to build a second press box.
I agree, 100%. I agree.
Yeah, every week we just come down and do our thing.
Yeah, the magic.
So I wanted to get Kathy on, but I guess she's not available to join the show. I wanted to get her experience because she was one of the ones who went with us. Efren Ramos, who's also with us, got to go for his first time, and they really seemed to enjoy it. They had a great time. And something I wanted to note, and I wanted to thank everybody who's out there for voting for us. The Web Weekend also happens to have these Webby Awards, where all the websites get together and essentially vote for who did the best. And the PhinManiacs actually came away with 2 awards. We came away with the best news content and best columns. So I want to thank everybody for voting for us and just making it possible that we could go home with some things to be proud of. We're going to do we work hard to give you all the latest news and updates, and we're going to continue to do that going into the following years, and we're just going to do our thing. So thank you so much for doing that for us.
Yeah, from someone who doesn't work at the site, thank you guys too, because it's always great content. It's always much appreciated.
We do our best. So now with that out of the way, let's discuss what we're really here to talk about. We're here to talk about the Miami Dolphins beating down the Houston Texans and making them look like absolute fools, kind of similarly to how they beat down the Tennessee Titans the week before. And I gotta say, guys, I am beyond stunned that this is going down the way that it is. And this is a big reason why the legend of Dan Campbell is growing so ridiculously fast. The Dolphins managed to beat down the Houston Texans by a score of 44-26. Ryan Tannehill had a perfect quarterback rating. We'll discuss that very briefly later on because I'm not really all that impressed with it. Lamar Miller, 14 carries, 175 yards, 2 touchdowns. I mean, you look at all this stuff that's going on. You see Jarvis Landry breaking tackles, making people miss, looking like a superstar in the making, like possibly one of the best slot receivers in football. The other argument could be Julian Edelman of the Patriots, I suppose, but somehow he just doesn't seem as electric as Jarvis Landry. And, of course, Rashard Matthews coming out of the Philbin doghouse and doing what it is that he's really good at. You look at all these things, you have to imagine, like, how much talent was missing on this team, how much talent was being caged up by Joe Philbin, who didn't want anything to do with all these personalities. You just think about this sort of thing for a minute. You look at these numbers. You look at what Dan Campbell's been able to do with this team, and I'm just baffled. I didn't expect I didn't expect the emotion to last as long as it has. I didn't expect them to be able to go in there and do the exact same thing they did against Tennessee, because Houston Texans, their record doesn't show it, but they're not exactly a bunch of slouches. You still got J.J. Watt, you got Clowney on the other end, you got Vince Wilfork, Brian Cushing. Of course, Cushing's a little messed up because of all the injuries he's dealt with, but they're not slouches. And the Dolphins 41-0 at the end of the first half. Not even the second. Not even the end of the game. End of the first half.
And yet that score, that final score, that final score doesn't even show it. Because, I mean, you would look at the final score if you hadn't seen the game, and, like, your first thought might be that the Dolphins pulled away. You wouldn't realize that, considering we play on Thursday Night Football, we didn't really play many of the starters in the second half. I mean, I'm surprised that Tannehill even came out there in the third quarter, to be honest. I thought they could have put Matt Moore out there in the third. That's the best part of this game, that they're well rested, that the starters don't have as much mileage, because it might, I mean, whether it makes a difference against the Patriots is another story, but the Patriots played against one of the most physical teams in the NFL, in the New York Jets. You know, the physical running game with Chris Ivory and that defense, you know, they're not going to be as fresh as the Dolphins are for this game. So that's the best thing in my mind about this game, that they'll be able to exploit. They might be able to exploit that in their freshness heading into a short week.
Yeah, it's beneficial. I think Dan Campbell did the best he could to get the starters out of that game. I mean, it's so rare that you're up 41-0 at half.
You don't know how to deal,
in an
right?
NFL
And like
game.
he doesn't have that situational knowledge yet, like in terms of making substitutions and doing that. That's not in his, because it's his first time doing all of that. So he's been able
I don't
to.
think hardly any coaches get that scenario very often, where you're up 41-0 at half and you have a Thursday night game. And what they were doing to, at least in the fourth quarter, I don't think they were quite doing it in the third quarter, but they were, which I thought was kind of clever. They were taking out their starting defensive line and leaving in their starting secondary, and then they were pulling out their starting secondary and putting back their defensive line.
That's interesting. I didn't notice that it was fully each group coming out, but that is interesting. And another huge difference maker in this new system that Dan Campbell, not new system, but in these new changes that Dan Campbell's made, he's allowing players to play to their strengths schematically. So one of my favorite defensive plays from the entire afternoon, they actually were in what's more similar to a 3-4 defense, and they shifted Sue outside to work on the right tackle. So Sue is working on the right tackle, and then Wake is outside of him with a tight end. But they stunt Wake and let him come inside, and then Sue just power rushes, and when Wake flushes Hoyer, Sue gets him. And they're actually, instead of using play design just with the scheme that Philbin had, they're using play design with intent. Every single play call is designed to attack a specific weakness or force a specific action. And it's
it's a great point, Max. And I touched on this last week just a bit, and my point was I was so sick of, in the NFL, these coaches that get so caught up in their scheme, and
there's
they're
a
so
big difference
set on their scheme.
The big difference, I wrote an article about it earlier this week, about scheme versus philosophy. You can get too caught up in a scheme, and you can let the scheme consume you, like what happened to Joe Philbin, where you have good football players who aren't being utilized to their fullest. And then you have a philosophy, which is not telling you what the destination is. The philosophy just tells you kind of a general outline for how to do it. Dan Campbell wants to dominate physically and play with will and force. Joe Philbin's scheme was a specific way that players had to do their jobs on the field. The philosophy doesn't tell them how to do their jobs. It just says what the end result has to be.
Yeah, it's the old, what Joe Philbin had in mind was, we are going to run this offensive personnel, and I expect you to execute it to such a level that it works that way. You just got to execute. And it just got to the point where all the teams knew exactly what was coming, and you kind of feel bad for those players, because you're in a situation where here you are at an NFL level, and you're expected to succeed when the other teams get to play pass defense the majority of the game. And you're trying to pass into that when the way the defensive line's rushing is rushing the passer. They're not defending the run. And the defensive backs are not really worried about coming up to stop the run. They're really watching the receivers. And that's, case in point where they were struggling. Now,
yep.
Dan Campbell, and I honestly think that's been an issue since Shula. And I'm not saying Dan Campbell has it figured out, but at least that's what they are doing, is they are putting players in positions to succeed. When they're creating their game plan, it sure appears that their goal is to get players in situations that maximize their ability versus trying to change players to be a player that fits the scheme. and that's it's a big fundamental change. And I think that the three biggest changes since Philbin left, which some of that was obviously due to injury and everything, but one is putting Billy Turner in the lineup. Billy Turner has just been dominating in the run game. He was dominating with Vince Wilfork. He is just looking very, very good in the run game. Now, I understand that if they get into a must-pass situation, he's going to be a little bit more of a liability because I think he tends to maybe make mistakes on how he pass blocks. I think when you get aggressive guys like that, they get prone to wanting to engage the defensive line, and they can get run by and stunts and blitzes and all that. So I'm not saying that Billy Turner is this complete dominating all-pro lineman, but he clearly is a very good run blocker. And that, it blows your mind that Philbin was so set on throwing the ball that he had to take Billy Turner out of the lineup, and you bring Dan Campbell in, and he's like, well, I'm going to put him in there because I want to run the game, and suddenly they can run the football. It changes the complexity of the game. And so the other thing too is Deion Sims back, and I know he got hurt right away for Philbin, but they can run that's a very effective. You bring in Billy Turner, you bring in Deion Sims with Jordan Cameron, and that's this isn't like it's magic. That is a solid 2 tight end set you can run with, and that's really the bottom line of what's going on offensively with the team is they suddenly have that offense to work with. And the exciting thing for me is that we haven't even utilized everything yet. They haven't really used Devontae Parker. You got a glimpse of what he can do when Tannehill put the ball up to him.
Oh, that was a beautiful play. I mean, that would have been Tannehill's best throw by far of the season, and it was his best throw of the season, but it just happened to be brought back because of a flag.
Right. So, I mean, the point being is they haven't even really utilized him yet into the offense. It's Dan Campbell's, taking the reins, and Jay Ajayi is not even back yet, but he'll be coming back from injury, and those are 2 very dynamic offensive players yet. So I think the offense has room to grow yet. It can get better. And the other thing not to forget about that Dan Campbell has had the luxury of is Brandon Albert's a lot better now. In game 1, he should not have been playing in game 1. That was pretty apparent to me. He wasn't in football shape. He was struggling.
He was our worst offensive lineman in week 1. I mean, it was that bad.
But he's getting much better steadily now. Yeah. Now he's getting healthy, and so having your left tackle back and having your number 2 tight end back gives them a lot more flexibility on offense on what they can do. But I know his mentality is aggressive, and obviously everybody wants to run the football. Everybody in the league wants to run it, but the reality is you can't always run it. And I kind of mentioned this a couple weeks ago. You're going to run into a situation where you're going to play a team that might have really good run-stopping personnel, really heavy D tackles, or really heavy linebackers that can really pound the running backs. But those teams may have weaknesses in the back end where they have some injuries in the defensive backfield, or their linebackers don't cover well in space. And I fully believe that in those matchups, Miami won't hesitate to switch back to a 3 and 4 wide receiver set, spread out, and start throwing the football all over, because they absolutely have the personnel to do that as well. It's just you got to be unpredictable, and so I'm hoping they do that some against the Patriots, where they're going to be in there pounding the football, then all of a sudden they're just going to switch to a hurry up with 3 and 4 wideouts, because you can suddenly put Jarvis Landry, Rashard Matthews, Devontae Parker, Greg Jennings, Kenny Stills. You have a whole arsenal of skill players, too, you can throw at them.
Yeah, and 3 things, really, when you break down what's going on with the pass protection and the run blocking that have helped. One is not just Deion Sims, but all of the people who are blocking who aren't offensive linemen. Lamar Miller and Damian Williams made some really exceptional plays in pass protection against the Texans. And Lamar Miller made some great plays against the Titans. I didn't watch much of Damian Williams in that game. But
I love seeing Damian Williams lay out J.J. Watt. That was something to me.
That was great. That was awesome. I mean, he came through with the pursuit. I mean, he missed him at the line of scrimmage. He whiffed a little bit. And then he came back for him in the backfield and freed up Tannehill. But the other thing, and Dan Campbell said this coming in, he doesn't want to put offensive linemen on an island. He wants to have them blocking as a group. And that's one thing I've noticed in recent weeks. You can see that it's not this big, wide-open gap between the offensive linemen where the huge zones used to be. It's a little tighter, which does allow for the fact that you look at our offensive linemen, and the strong players are staggered at the 1, 3, and 5 spots. You have Brandon Albert, Mike Pouncey, and Juwan James. So if you're going to clump them together a little bit, you can have those players help out, and then the other guys, Lamar Miller and Deion Sims, can pick up some of the slack. And the other thing, like we've all said, is just running the football. I mean, running the football makes you a dynamic team, and it allows you to chew clock, is the other thing. The Dolphins were getting into situations where, against the Redskins in the first half, they possessed the ball for like half the time that the Redskins did because they couldn't run it. So they would not only have 3 and outs, but the 3 and outs would last 17 seconds because it would be 3 pass plays that were all incomplete. So you have the situation now where you can go on these long drives. Against the Texans, we didn't need to go on long drives because every play was 50 yards. But it's a new determination, and it's a different feeling when you watch the game. I mean, when we were watching Joe Philbin's offense, we would sit there and we'd say, oh, great, like he's dropping back, or oh, great, they're handing the ball off. It was never exciting. The last few weeks, you're on the edge of your seat waiting. And one of my favorite plays from last Sunday was the Lamar Miller, the long touchdown run, where he went straight. J.J. Watt went out of the game with an injury. He came back later. But on that play where J.J. Watt was out, they ran it straight at his side, straight where he would have been, and ended up with a touchdown because of it. Dan Campbell and I guess now Bill Lazor, we've seen maybe how much he was handcuffed by Philbin. They're willing to attack the defense in that way and attack any hint of weakness that they can see.
It's refreshing, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's refreshing to have balance.
Yep. Yeah, and when we were talking about the Texans game, obviously we were talking about J.J. Watt, and I was one of the things we were talking about all together was you cannot allow him to take the game over, and you just don't get him in a lot of one-on-one matchups. And that's exactly what you're talking about, Max, where they have a tight end, or they're grouping him in tighter, or they're putting him back with the tackle, and so that tackle knows I have a running back inside, or I have a tight end outside, and so they have a lot of help.
You can double block without using 2 offensive linemen. So you can have.
Yeah, I mean, it's just help. Give them help.
Right.
And I don't know how many times in the Joe Philbin era where he was so set on running his scheme where it's got to be 3 and 4 wide receivers in there, and that leaves your offensive lineman one-on-one a lot. And I fully believe that had Joe Philbin been coaching that game, we would have been leaving either Juwan James or Brandon Albert one-on-one for the majority of the game with J.J. Watt, and he would have made us pay for it because he's so good. He's going to beat those guys a few times a game, maybe get back there and cause a turnover and completely change what you're trying to do. And so it was like, wow, you just don't. I mean, and you knew the Texans were not a complete defense. They had injuries. Their defensive backfield was suspect, and you just knew that. Just don't let J.J. Watts control the game. That's all you really had to focus on, and it was refreshing to see him do that. And
that defense can attack you in so many ways because Brian Cushing is a great player, and Jadeveon Clowney is an up-and-coming young player. So
Clowney's had some serious struggles, and I think Cushing might just be done from all the injuries he's suffered.
But they can still make plays.
Slouches,
they're not slouches by any means. Cushing is still one of the better inside linebackers in the league, I think.
But the point being that you can't let those guys take the game over. You make their offensive beat you. Make them go down long fields on offense and run the ball at those guys. If you would have just let Clowney and J.J. Watt tee off on Tannehill all game and throw the ball 80% of the time, we would have got demolished. I can tell you right now.
And we said. Going into that game, we knew it's about slowing down those players, and we didn't let them get involved. And the thing about the team is it's not just that they've been playing with energy. They've looked prepared, which is what surprised me about it. They have looked brilliantly prepared for all of these games, especially on the defensive side of the ball. They know. They're understanding what the offense is going to do. Instead of just reacting to it, they're dictating. And they know what's going on. Under Kevin Coyle, it felt like they were so wrapped up in their own scheme that they were busy with that and they couldn't go into a game and focus on saying, well, we know what the offense is going to do, and we can stop it. They were saying, how can we use our scheme to stop the offense? What the defense is doing right now is they'll do things like, there was a great play where Michael Thomas, from all the way up top, recognizes that this play is going to be a run. He knows what side it's going to be. He comes down, and before the snap, he's already there to make the tackle. These players right now know what they can do to help make plays. And it's really refreshing to see the defense swarm. That's what they weren't doing. They were playing spread apart. And part of that is probably due to Cameron Wake's health. I mean, he's been a different player these last 2 weeks because he had the bye week to get healthy. And that ability he has to explode, he gets almost horizontal to the turf. I mean, he gets ridiculously low and then shoots up. And it's hard to do that on one leg. So Cameron Wake's health is a huge factor. And he's been more so than I've seen in his whole career. He's been attacking the football. He hasn't just been attacking the quarterback. He's been getting his hand in. And that could be due to the fact that we've played two subpar quarterbacks. Marcus Mariota is not subpar, but at this point in his career, he's someone you can take advantage of. And obviously, Brian Hoyer is a subpar quarterback. So you can attack those two players in that way. It'll be really interesting to see what happens when they get into the issues with Belichick, where on offense you're trying to deal with those linebackers, and on defense you're trying just to slow down Brady. And it could help that Dion Lewis is not playing.
And we'll discuss more about the Patriots a little bit later when we have Ethan Hammerman join the show. But I want to go into a little bit more of a specific regarding the Texans game. And I don't know if maybe people are tired of the quarterback talk, but I feel like this must be addressed just so people understand what's going on here. Ryan Tannehill had, by numbers standards, an incredible, unbelievable, possibly impossible game. He went 18 for 19. He only missed one pass, and it was near the end. And he had 282 yards, 14.8 yards per throw, 4 touchdowns, and he got sacked 4 times. But then a couple of those were his fault, which I have to at least admit. But numbers-wise, he was the best you could possibly be. He had a perfect passer rating, blah, 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 158.3, and currently he is a candidate for Offensive Player of the Week. Now,
Lamar Miller is also a candidate for that award.
Yes, and
Jarvis
I would say
Landry should be.
Jarvis Landry should be. And I would go out to say this. Lamar Miller is much, 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 much more deserving of that award than Ryan Tannehill. I don't care about his numbers. I don't care about his passer rating. I never have cared about passer rating. Usually it's a piece of junk. And just to add this little side note, Magical QB World, that hashtag, is not meant to act as an excuse for a quarterback who has struggling, or to say that what it's meant to do is illustrate the erroneous idea that a quarterback is the end-all and be-all of a football team. It's not meant to undervalue the position. Of course, the quarterback position is important. If you don't have a good quarterback, you usually don't go anywhere. However, a lot of times we see quarterbacks getting credit or blame that they are not deserving of. Right now, the narrative is that Andy Dalton has finally figured it out, and the Bengals are going on his back, and he is leading them into battle. Well, if you want to go with the fact that he's the quarterback, then sure, in the most technical sense, yes, he is leading him into battle. However, it's more along the lines of the army that's running behind him than it is him actually leading them. Now you look at Ryan Tannehill. Tannehill he could be a lot better than he is, and we're seeing the results of what a balanced offense can do for him now. But he was getting a lot of the blame when he really wasn't deserving of it. At the time, he had no help. At the time, he had no running game. At the time, he had no defense. It was basically ride or die with Ryan Tannehill, and he was getting the blame for their losses. That's undeserving blame. Dalton is undeserving credit. That's when Magical QB World comes in. Of course, Aaron Rodgers is the reason that the Packers are still good. The Packers are winning despite not having their top receivers in the game and having a defense that's average most of the time at best. of course Brian Hoyer is not going to be able to lead the Texans into battle. He's shown over and over again that he is not a very good quarterback, and you imagine with all the talent that they have with DeAndre Hopkins and Arian Foster, who unfortunately his career may be over. I hope the best that he's okay and he'll be able to play again in maybe this next season, if not the season after. But the Texans have talent, and it's very possible that Brian Hoyer is the one that's holding them back. That was the case with the Cincinnati Bengals up until last year, and the talent around Dalton finally became so great that it was just like not even Dalton can hold them back. Magical QB World is not meant to be an excuse. It is meant to illustrate when quarterbacks are getting undue blame or credit. Aaron Rodgers deserves the credit for the Packers being bad, or rather being good, I should say. Brian Hoyer deserves a lot of the blame for the Texans being bad. That's what Magical QB World is all about. Now, as for Tannehill's quarterback rating and that perfect stuff about him being Offensive Player of the Week, none of that should be valid because, and I got a lot of trouble for this right after the game was over because I had said that last week against the Titans, Ryan Tannehill looked a lot more impressive just with the throws that he made. He made a lot of bigger throws. He made a lot of more difficult throws and more impressive throws. And that led to him, after the Texans game, breaking the record for consecutive completions in 2 weeks. He got 25 straight completions before he finally threw the incomplete pass intended for Deion Sims at the end of the Texans game. And, okay, that's fine and dandy, but if you watched the game, you know that Tannehill really didn't do anything all that impressive. He dinked and dunked, and he let his playmakers make plays. He let Jarvis Landry take a 14-yard route that put him near the sidelines and run all the way across the field and go into the end zone for a touchdown. You saw Rashard Matthews on a short slant turn into a gigantic touchdown, yard after catch touchdown. You saw Lamar Miller take a little dump pass and run it all the way into the end zone for 85 yards. So is that really Tannehill? No, that's his playmakers. So in this case, Magical QB World would be saying, why are you giving all the credit to Tannehill? It was the other guys who did it. So I am not impressed by what Ryan Tannehill was able to do. It looked really easy. This is a result of the balance. This is a result of Dan Campbell saying we're going to make sure that this offense is functioning the way an offense should, and we're not going to rely on any one player. We're going to act this out as a team. So I'm not impressed by Tannehill's performance. Good for him. He was efficient. And really, that isn't meant to be an indictment against Tannehill. Efficient should be all you need. This is team football. And if you need to rely on your quarterback, then you have holes elsewhere, and that's a problem.
I can't agree with you on that one, Lewis. He was 18 of 19, and so when your quarterback hits all the passes he throws, that's really all you can ask him to do. And so, I mean, for you to say he's not deserving, well, I mean, were you expecting him to?
Well, Chad, I didn't mean that. I didn't mean that in the sense that he shouldn't get any credit. Of course, he did the throws, but it's not like he was making really tough 25-yard slants into a secondary that was like double teaming his receiver. It was little easy short passes. So in that sense, no, he wasn't that impressive. He did his job.
I could go along with you saying he didn't do anything that you would consider amazing. Like, he wasn't hitting these passes that were 30, 40 yards down the field that require an unbelievable throw. But at the same time, I guess I don't know why you would be trying to make those passes unless you absolutely are in desperate situations. And, you know, as we mentioned on Devontae Parker, that was a vertical pass he nailed, you know, right on the money. So I thought he played very, very well. And on those short passes where Rashard Matthews scores, where Jarvis Landry scores, there is a lot of accuracy to that. You have to put the ball in the right spot so they have the ability to run after the catch. And if you put the ball off the mark and they get a hold of the ball but they have to turn their body to make a catch, they're in a lot easier position to be tackled. So I thought Tannehill played very, very well. Now, again, is he running a team right now where, like Aaron Rodgers, because right now you're right, Aaron Rodgers, they don't have a really strong running game, they don't have a really strong defense, so they're relying heavily on his ability to throw the football around. And I'm not in any dreamland where I think Tannehill is performing on par with Aaron Rodgers, but he's progressing forward, and that's what you want. And to me, you have three types of quarterbacks. You have quarterbacks that are bad, which honestly, we have not played a good quarterback this year yet, in my opinion. We have not played a high-level quarterback. You have quarterbacks that are the quote-unquote efficient, and these are the quarterbacks that don't lose football games, and they put you in position to win football games. And lots of teams have won Super Bowls with efficient quarterbacks. And the best quarterback we had before Tannehill after Marino was Pennington, and that's all he was an efficient quarterback. He couldn't throw big passes. He didn't have a live arm, but he knew where the ball had to go. He could read the defense, and he didn't throw a lot of interceptions that lose football games. And that's kind of where Tannehill is at. He's at that level right now where I don't see him making a lot of poor decisions, and that's what's really, really hard to get to in the NFL with the speed at which things happen and the complexity at which the defenses throw at you is, do you understand where the football has to go and where it has to be located so you don't throw an interception? And in the Titans game, both of Tannehill's interceptions, one of them was obviously a tip off the hands, and the second one, it may have been his fault with miscommunicating with Jordan Cameron where he was supposed to run the route, but the ball was thrown with the expectation the receiver was going to a different spot. So my contention on those would be those were not decisions that you see young quarterbacks often make or back where they throw the ball into like double coverage, or they put the ball in a high down the middle of the field so the safeties can get it. Tannehill's been pretty good about protecting that football and not making stupid mistakes like that. Now, there's that next level where you're able to pretty much be unstoppable when you have defenses playing pass defense and you just pass on them anyway. And we're going to see it on Thursday. Tom Brady's one of those guys where every team in the league knows he's going to be throwing it to Edelman and Gronk, and they're just so good at knowing exactly where to go based on what defense you're in. And Brady knows exactly where to put the ball, and it's extremely difficult to stop. And Tannehill is not there. If he was there, Joe Philbin would still be the coach, because that's what Joe Philbin was trying to create, was Ryan Tannehill to be this quarterback that he is so good and our receivers are so good, we're going to pass. It really doesn't matter what you do on defense. It's not going to be stoppable. And we have seen from the last couple of years, even when Tannehill's playing well, that's not what he does. He's not a quarterback that is so good you can just run pass plays all game long and be unstoppable. But I think under Dan Campbell, you're seeing that he can take care of the football. If you make it so he doesn't have to throw the ball 40 times in a game, they can be very successful, because Tannehill is fully capable of throwing every pass route out there. Now, I know a lot of people say deep ball, deep ball, deep ball, but that pass that was a touchdown to Jarvis Landry, I don't know that Chad Pennington can throw that route effectively. When it's a 13 to 15 yard out range and you got to hit that takes a live arm, and Tannehill definitely has an arm that can hit those passes. So hopefully he's going to continue to get better now, because I would much rather see him being efficient right now and going 18 of 19 rather than going 27 of 40 and losing football games. So it's going to be interesting to see.
One thing that can be said is you can have guys where you get into that groove where they are your second and third quarterbacks that you just described. And often that's what I feel like we're watching with Tom Brady. When we see him, you don't watch throws that Tom Brady makes often and say, wow, that was a jaw-droppingly good throw. It's not the Aaron Rodgers mold where you watch him play and you see these just ridiculous things where he flicks his wrist and the ball goes 50 yards onto a point. But we're watching someone execute their system perfectly in a way that allows him to excel. And I think in this quarterback discussion, you have to say the quarterback is an extension of your system. The quarterback allows you to take your offense as far as it's going to go. And so what Ryan Tannehill did on Sunday is what you see Tom Brady do a lot of the time. I'm not comparing the two quarterbacks at all, by any means. I'm just saying that what we saw Ryan Tannehill do, and both of you are right in this. Chad, it's great that he was efficient, and Lewis, you're right, he entirely doesn't deserve to say that he had an amazing game. But the offense will go where a quarterback like this can take them to an extent. And in a situation like this where Tannehill can manage, he did more than manage. He made some impressive plays, but he did what he was asked to do. And you can't just look at the numbers. And I think that's another issue, Lewis, I think that you're talking about that illustrates the problem we're running into this week with people saying, oh, Ryan Tannehill threw 4 touchdowns. Ryan Tannehill did not throw 4 touchdowns. Ryan Tannehill threw, in reality, 1. The one to Jarvis Landry, the shorter one, not the long one that he took 80 yards, was a play that you said, okay, that was a normal touchdown throw. I mean, he threw it, he waited in the pocket, threw it over the middle, and Jarvis Landry walked it in. But the 3 plays, the screens and then the Rashard Matthews play and the Jarvis Landry play were not quote unquote touchdown passes. I mean, they were good passes. But when you look at the way the game played out, you see what happens when a quarterback can play efficient football. And I'm a firm believer that if your quarterback can play efficient football, he doesn't have to throw for 400 yards a game and you'll be fine. And then there are guys like Aaron Rodgers who can do both, who can throw for 400 yards and be efficient, and that's when it's absolute madness. That's what Peyton Manning used to do.
That's and then you're talking about top 5s. I mean, you're talking about elite quarterbacks.
I'm just for those 5. I'm not talking about what Tannehill's doing. I'm saying what Tannehill's doing is what you have to do for this football team. This team is not built for him to throw the ball 40 times a game. It's built for him to throw the ball.
They have the personnel for it, but you can't. I mean, that's the reality.
We don't have the O-line. We don't have the O-line for it.
Well, yeah, but even the teams that have good O-lines, you can't. I mean, if you come in every game, you're going to just throw. It's so hard to consistently win those games, and it's much easier to hit a 40 or 50-yard bomb when the defense has to play run because the pass rush is slowed down and you get a little more time to get the ball down the field. But, you think about the highlight things you guys talk about. You can watch highlights of Michael Vick on the Falcons where he jukes 3 defensive linemen, runs around the backfield for, a minute, and then chucks the ball 40 yards down the field and he hits a receiver when the coverage finally breaks down. That is an absolutely amazing play, but the offense failed and that was a broken play. And what you're expecting is the offense to have guys that get open on the routes, the quarterback to identify it and hit it. And that's what Brady does. It's so good. Brady, you hit the case in point there, Max. I don't see Tom Brady make that many unbelievable throws where he's hitting guys that are on a 30-yard out and it's just an unbelievable rope on a line throw. He is so good at reading the defenses, and his receivers are so good at reading the defenses with him.
He could close his eyes. He could have closed his eyes and made that throw to Rob Gronkowski to win the game against the Jets.
Yeah, he knows immediately where his 1, 2, and 3 outlets are on where the defense lines up when he comes up to the line of scrimmage. A lot of defenses make it even easier because he does a hard count and they jump somewhere on the blitz, so he already knows where they're shifting on the defense. And it's just almost impossible to stop because he's so efficient. And that's the hard. It's hard to get quarterbacks there, and that's where Tannehill is headed right now. And I don't know that Tannehill will ever be an Aaron Rodgers. I mean, Aaron Rodgers he's special. He's elite.
When you see a guy like Aaron Rodgers, I mean, it's not like when Aaron Rodgers came in the league, he had obviously time sitting behind Brett Favre, but when he got on the field, within a year or two, he was getting close to where he is now. He's obviously improving steadily every year, which is scary. But you knew. Right now with Tannehill, we're seeing he could be a top 10 quarterback.
No, yeah, and I think he could be too. He isn't a top 10 right now, but I think he's a top half in the league right now. And to me, I always find it funny because it's unbelievable to me how critical people are of Tannehill. Especially the media and everybody. And I always just say, have you watched like the last couple decades since Marino retired and watched when we had Trent Green in there at quarterback and we had Cleo Lemon in there and A.J. Feely in there? And I just think, we had quarterbacks that are like what the Texans are going through right now. We had the Brian Hoyers in there playing quarterback that just are not able to do it. And I don't know how many games when you go back to the Tony Soprano eras and earlier when you just knew if like you were playing the Patriots and they had 28 points on the board, you had absolutely no chance to win that game. Just no chance because you did not have the quarterback to be able to throw the football around to keep up. And so I think now that you have Tannehill, I'm thinking, man, we've got a decent quarterback right now. He isn't Aaron Rodgers and he isn't Tom Brady, and everybody's so expecting him to be Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady right now that I'm just like, I'm happy we actually have a quarterback that can allow us to win games. And so he definitely has some room to grow.
Is good, but where he's going is promising, and he's far from done.
I would say every team we played, probably every single one of them would like to have Tannehill right now. I mean, he'd be starting on the Redskins. He'd probably be starting on the Jaguars. He'd probably be starting on the Titans. And that's not a knock towards Blake Bortles or Mariota. They're not at the level of Tannehill right now. They're young and they're still learning. They're where he was maybe.
We could be on the opposite side of this, and what would be so frustrating, at least we see similar things from Tannehill every game. We don't have the Blake Bortles roller coaster, which is 400 yards one game and then 180 yards the next game.
Yeah.
I'd rather take 250 with 2 to 3 touchdowns every week than 400 yards one week and then 2 straight weeks of 120 yards.
Yeah, exactly. Now we're gonna get tested, and it'll probably be Thursday night even, but you're gonna hit those scenarios where we can't run the ball, or we're down, 14 points in the middle of the third quarter, and that's when we're going to need him to be special. That's when the defenses are going to be playing the pass, and he's going to have to be able to hit some receivers that have tight coverage, and he's going to be able to have to make some plays with his legs, and he then is going to have to be able to take the team on his back and make plays. And to be honest, we don't know that yet. We just haven't been in that many games where Tannehill's had to win it, and
you're exactly right.
Typically, we've lost games because we have not been able to finish out the game, and we end up trying to rely on our defense to stop a team, so then we can just kneel it on offense. So we don't know that. That's what was so special about Marino is when he was in there, and it would be the fourth quarter, and we get the ball back, and you're down, 4 points or whatever with a minute and a half to go. You were excited because you wanted to see what Marino could do because that's when he was at his best. And so hopefully that's what he can do. He can get there.
We've seen little moments with Tannehill doing that. I mean, we saw the Atlanta game in his second year where he led that drive. We saw in the New England home victory when we needed points, Tannehill was able to get them. But this is the hardest situation in the National Football League to win in, playing in Foxborough in prime time. There's nowhere harder to win, and there's no harder set of circumstances to do it than on a short week like this.
Oh yeah, that's the next 2 games are going to be difficult. It's not both of those are very hostile environments, and
that's going to be a fun game. That's going to be a fun slugfest. Buffalo.
Oh, they're both going to be. Don't make no mistake. They're both going to be slugfests. So the Patriots game is going to be very physical. It's as much as the Patriots are covered about Tom Brady, they play 60 minutes of football every week, and so that they win a lot of games in that last 5 minutes because the other teams only play 55 minutes, and so
yes, they do.
That's going to be part of it. If we're going to see if the players are really believing in what Dan Campbell is preaching, because both the last 2 weeks we've had those games won by practically the start of the fourth quarter. The games were over, and so I'll be stunned, shocked, in disbelief if we have the game won by the start of the fourth quarter in New England. So more than likely it's going to be very, very close, or we're going to be behind going in the fourth quarter, and that's when we're really going to see what the team is made of. Are they really a changed team that's ready to rise? Because it's easy to rise when you've got the game won. It's a whole different situation to rise in the face of adversity. So we're going to learn a lot Thursday.
Absolutely. And look, guys, that's the only point I was trying to make. Chad, to your point, I wasn't trying to say that Tannehill deserved none of the credit. I'm not trying to say that at all. Obviously, he had a lot to do with it, but for you, this is essentially the embodiment of the whole point of the magical QB world that I was trying to make. For people to go out and say that it was Tannehill making awesome plays, that just simply isn't the case. What he did do was he was efficient, he did his job, and with an offense that's balanced, you shouldn't need your quarterback to do anything more than that. And he didn't. He did his job. He was efficient. He kept the ball safe, and he let his playmakers make plays. So, I mean, hooray for Tannehill. He got the ball to where it needed to be. And yes, it requires accuracy, so good for him. But the big, huge plays that were game-changing came at the hands of players who caught the ball and then made something happen. It really had very little to do with actually Tannehill, and that's not, again, that's not an indictment. That's just saying don't put your credit where it's not due. If you want to look at the hero of the game, don't look at Tannehill because it's not him.
Yeah, I think that embodies the whole idea that every time in football, the quarterbacks get too much of the blame when the teams lose, and they get too much of the credit when teams win. And I think that's always true to an extent. That's absolutely the case. So, but like I said, I'm not as concerned about highlight throws from Tannehill. What I want to see out of Tannehill is when it's 3rd and 7 and you're got 45 seconds left in the game and you're on your own 40 and you've got to get your team down there, can he handle it? That's when he needs to make that incredible throw and the pressure of the moment. And so that's the big one. That's what I'd like to see out of him.
And that's all we want. All right, Max. I know you got to get out of here, so I'm going to go ahead and let you go. Thanks for joining us for this first half of the show. So we really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me anytime. Love being on.
All right. So
awesome. Talk to you guys soon.
Talk to you soon, Max. So that was Max Himmelreck of the Deep End Miami. You can follow him on Twitter at the Deep End Miami. And we're gonna talk a little bit more about the Patriots in just a moment. I'm gonna go ahead and get Ethan into here so we can discuss the Patriots. But Chad, I'm just curious about this real quick. What do you expect for what do you expect from the Dolphins going into the game against the Patriots? Because the Patriots are a completely different animal to anything we've faced already.
Well, what I'm very, very interested in is what the coaching staff does. And I listened to Dan Campbell's press conferences, and I don't know. I mean, to me, football, it seems so simple, and Joe Philbin was making football so hard, and Dan Campbell, it seems like he's making football simple again. But one of the questions that was posed to him is, do you have any schemes or ideas on how you're going to put pressure on Tom Brady? And his response was, he gets the ball out so quick, I don't know that you can put that kind of pressure on him. And so he already kind of knows, what they're facing. And so I'm going to be interested to see what they bring in terms of a scheme to play against the Patriots. With that being said, I expect them to continue to be very physical, and I expect them to try to run the football, especially because you're going to be playing in Foxborough. It's going to be loud, and it's going to be a situation where it's not easy to run sophisticated pass plays where you're running a lot of audibles and stuff because you're not going to be able to hear very well. And you just got to keep in mind, too, they're still a pretty young team. I mean, Rashard Matthews has not played a ton of snaps. Jarvis Landry's a second-year player. Just so many young players on the team that are still gelling together, and that's a situation that can get unnerving in a hurry. And one of the best things to do in that is take some passes to your tight ends, run the football, and try to get that established. And that's what I expect them to start the game with. Now, I don't know that anybody has a good methodology on how to stop the Patriots offense. Tom Brady, he is so good at reading defenses, and I expect they're going to challenge Jamar Taylor frequently in that game. I expect they're going to be looking to isolate our linebackers in one-on-one matchups, especially with Gronk and Edelman and those guys. I don't expect the Patriots to allow Tom Brady to be dropping back and allowing Cam Wake and Sue and all those guys to come in and really put pressure on the passing game. They'll probably be doing a lot of short routes, and you're going to see that until the Dolphins prove they can stop it. And so that's probably what you're going to see early on, is going to see how Miami plays defense. They're either going to have to play aggressive defense where they play a lot of tight man take some chances on blitzes, and maybe risk giving up some big plays with the idea of trying to get them to do some 3-and-outs. Or you might see them run some looser coverage and try to see if they can force Tom Brady to have to run 10, 15 play drives and do a lot of those 5-6 yard pass plays. But I hope they do the former and be really aggressive, because I just think Brady is too efficient and the wide receivers are too good. If you don't take risks and try to get some turnovers, they will just execute 15 play drives down the field on you. That's just the reality of how good they are.
Yep, and it's going to be interesting to see. Right now we have Ethan Hammerman, and he's a big-time Patriots guy. He knows his stuff. I'm going to say that much. So, Ethan, I want to thank you for joining us for the show tonight. We have some stuff to talk about here. Hello?
I think you got him muted. Do you have him off mute?
No, he just took his mute off. Ethan. We seem to be having some technical difficulties here with Ethan. So until we can get that sorted out, personally, if it's me, I'm just looking to make sure that Tom Brady hits the ground a lot, because I've always said from beginning to end is that the one way to take out the Patriots is to mess with Tom Brady. It seems that every time the Dolphins, or any other team rather for that matter, have beaten the Patriots, it's been when Brady has hit the ground a ton, and I do mean a ton. And just thinking back to last year when the Dolphins pulled off a huge upset in Miami in the home opener and beat the Patriots, essentially what they did was they just hit Brady a lot, and they wound up running the ball right down their throats with no Sean Moreno. Now, with that in mind, that's with Vince Wilfork and with all those guys who they had before. That's with Darrelle Revis and no, Brandon Browner wasn't there yet, so he doesn't count. But this Patriots defense, at least on paper, is not as potent as it was last year. I believe right now what they're ranked in is that they are 19th against the run and 18th against the pass. It might be flipped, but the numbers are still the same. So it's very, very possible to run the ball against the New England Patriots. So with that in mind, if you can keep a balanced offense and keep running the football the way they're supposed to, because you can scheme and do all that stuff all you want. In the running game, it really is about executing run blocking and just making sure you hit those holes. And unless you have a guy who's as dominant as Ndamukong Suh there, the strategy doesn't really change that much, at least not in my mind. You either going to run the ball up the middle and execute run blocking, or you're going to wind up running the ball to the right and still making sure you execute. You just got to make sure you win those one-on-one blocks like Dan Campbell's been talking about all along. So you run the ball, you make sure you have that balance, and then you can let Tannehill kind of do his little thing, make sure that he doesn't make any dumb mistakes. Because just on paper, and I have to keep saying it because just on paper, because New England always seems to a way to defy the piece of paper that says they're meh at best. On offense, it's not impossible to get past the New England Patriots. Now, on defense, that's when it's going to be a little trickier because, of course, it's Tom Brady, and you have a healthy Gronkowski, and you have Julian Edelman, who keeps defying every single stereotype that's made about him. You always hear the thing white man can't jump and all that stuff. Well, that white man can knock the socks off of a lot of defenders who never really see it coming. He is, as the media would say, deceptively quick. In other words, well, never mind. But you get the point, is that Julian Edelman and Rob Gronkowski, they're the top weapons of that offense, and anybody you throw in there is going to wind up being a difficult challenge to deal with, because Brady manages to pick apart defenses like it's nothing else. You have Kelvin Shepard in the middle. Brady's going to attack Kelvin Shepard. You have Walt Aikens or Michael Thomas, and more so Aikens than Thomas. At safety, he's going to attack Walt Aikens and Michael Thomas. if you have somebody else there, you have somebody like my brain is not functioning right now. I'm a little under the weather, folks. So that's if I sound nasally and all that, it's not on purpose. It's simply that I can't really talk through my mouth. I can't really talk that great right now. So anyway, the Patriots offense is going to do what the Patriots offense does. Rashad Jones is not good in coverage, so Brady's going to try and see if he can't find a way to force Rashad Jones into coverage over and over again. He's going to try and find a way to make players get uncomfortable and put them out of their comfort zone so they can't function the way they're supposed to. And that's going to be the main issue for the Dolphins, is that will they be able to make sure that they keep their comfort zones from getting too uncomfortable? Because if you put Rashad Jones in coverage, suddenly he's not an all-pro anymore. I'm sorry, that's just the case. If you try to put Walt Aikens one-on-one with somebody, it's going to be bad. If you try to put Kelvin Shepherd on anybody, there's going to be problems. So the only hope that I can think of on defense for the Dolphins is that they have to be dominant like nothing else on the defensive line, because that's the one thing that they're known for in their strength. That's the one thing they're going to be able to be good at. And if Sue and Wake can cause Brady problems, then we really do have a good chance.
Well, yeah, I mean, it comes down to situational football. I mean, when Miami beat New England last year in Week 1, we got some special teams scores, and we had New England and Tom Brady situation where we knew they had to throw the football. And Miami is very effective at rushing the passer, but I'm telling you right now, New England is not going to be doing a lot of deep drops with Tom Brady and trying to throw 20 and 30-yard routes down the field. They're going to be, doing more of that 3-second drops and getting the football out. And so I don't think that Cam Wake or Ndamukong Suh are going to early on in that game anyway, be putting all kinds of pressure on Tom Brady unless we get some phenomenal, man-to-man coverage or something that forces Brady to start checking down his routes. Then maybe you can get to him, but it's going to be they're going to push, they're going to throw the ball to where your defense dictates it, and you've got to tackle consistently the whole game. I mean, that's really what they make you do. And if you don't do a good job tackling, and if you don't do a good job being disciplined and everybody doing their jobs on defense, then they move the ball down the field. And that doesn't necessarily mean that it's the Dolphins' defense. They do that pretty much against every defense in the NFL. So it's going to be a big challenge. And the best thing we could do is on the other side of the football is you got to score some points. If you can force New England to be more one-dimensional, then they're more defendable. But until you do that, and you got to deal with Gronk, where they can run the ball, pass the ball, it's a very, very difficult task to slow down their offense.
Yep, and now we're going to try this again. Ethan Hammerman, thank you for joining us. Is your microphone working now, bud?
Are we good?
Yep, we are good. All right, thanks for joining us today.
Do a Hangout on Chrome. It doesn't work.
I'm using Chrome.
It isn't working for me, so I switched over to a different browser.
Okay, well, whatever works, man. So, okay, just for a second, I'm going to put you in the hands of my co-host, Chad Ronenbaum, because there's a mosquito buzzing around me, and it's driving me insane. It's actually bitten me like 6 times, so I need to kill it. So, Chad, take it away.
Okay, that's a new one. Hey, Ethan, this is Chad Ronenbaum. Thanks for coming on the show. Well, basically, as you've been working on getting on it, we've just been starting to preview the Dolphins-Patriots game a little bit, and obviously, we're looking at it from the perspective of the Dolphins on how to try to slow down Tom Brady and how to attack the Patriots defense. But we're just curious on your side of with the Patriots. What are they talking about in terms of the Dolphins? Are there certain players they're concerned about, or certain methodologies you expect them to use against the Dolphins after having watched so many games?
Yeah, I think with the Dolphins, the biggest thing the Patriots are scared about is that the front four is going to be able to get pressure on Brady, because the Patriots are missing, I believe, 4 preseason offensive line starters right now. I think a couple are out for the year, a couple more on the PUP are just sort of like dinged up. So they're going to have some issues moving the ball if they get into a whole bunch of passing situations. And they're also going to have some issues with those deep drops. Running the ball, I mean, Shaq Mason probably has been their best run blocker the past few weeks, and he might be out for this game. They will get Dion Lewis back, who's been a really, really good weapon out of the backfield, but the way the Patriots play, they would like to run the ball, I think, more than they have recently. So we'll see how they do with that. And then on defense, even though the defense I think has been a little bit underrated, not quite as bad as some Patriots fans may think, the secondary still isn't great, and they have some tackling issues. And I think Jarvis Landry is somebody who really could make some plays happen after the catch, the way that he's able to move the ball. Overall, it's mostly just the stuff that the Patriots are always worried about with the Dolphins, just strong front four, and then those playmakers after the catch.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. So, just a little bit off-topic question. I saw that the NFL is changing their filing and stuff on Tom Brady, and we're obviously with the Dolphins fans, we're all like, yeah, let's suspend Brady just for our self-benefits. But I really kind of figured it would be they would just settle on this and get it over with. Maybe make Brady take a game or two, everybody call it good, and get back to playing football. But it just seems to, this is just my personal perspective, that there's a lot of politics going on behind the scenes here, whether it's with Kraft and Goodell or what's going on. So I'm just curious from your perspective. To me, this has gotten way beyond the deflate stuff and Tom Brady and everything, and it seems to have went to a whole different level of who's involved. And what do you guys see from that, from your perspective?
I mean, I'm not one of those defend the wall types, although I respect their opinion. Just not me. I personally think that definitely this is a matter of pride now, and Roger Goodell has taken a lot of losses, and the owners outside of Robert Kraft have taken a lot of losses. Robert Kraft has a lot of things that all the other owners wish they had. He has this really good relationship with CBS and Les Moonves. He has a whole bunch of favor that he often curries with the league. He is the master of good PR. I mean, he's a guy who, his wife died, and then he ends up with like some 30-year-old model woman, and no one really cares. If any other owner did that, I mean, Jerry Jones on the regular does that, and people he has like this reputation as sort of like a loose cannon playboy, and Kraft still he's Robert Kraft. He's sort of above the public opinion sort of fury. So I really think that played into it a lot. I think there's also some politics. I've heard that since the 2008 election, it's been a little bit more politicized between the owners. There are some very, very strong political opinions on both sides of the aisle. And, it's been a little bit harder for people to compromise. A lot of people have really sort of taken personally some of the financials that were carried into political campaigns and into other political initiatives. So I just don't think it's a very good environment right now. I mean, when you get 32 of the richest people in the country in the same room, there's going to be arguments. But really, I totally agree with you. This is above and beyond just deflating footballs right now. This is a matter of a bunch of rich men wanting to continue to show their pride.
Because yeah, that's kind of where I was at with it. I was disappointed, and obviously as a Dolphins fan, if the Patriots being 6-0, we need any help we can get to try to get back into the divisional chase. But I was disappointed to see that they're trying to refile it now, and I was disappointed when it went into the courts because it sets a precedence. Because this isn't an off the field issue where it's a debate whether or not the players should be playing, like an Adrian Peterson or Ray Rice, any of that stuff where it's like, well, they did something heinous and so they shouldn't be playing football. No, this is actually a game, whether or not there was cheating, and it was specifically about what was going on in the game and the sport. And to have that leave the NFL, to have to be decided outside the NFL in courtrooms, is such a horrible precedence because, if a ref makes a bad call now, do we need to leave the NFL to, have it reviewed by a judge somewhere? And so it was astounding to me that it's still raging on, I guess, the fight. And so as much as Tom Brady has torched the Dolphins, I kind of feel bad for the guy with the amount of distraction he has to shoulder all the time from something that really is way beyond what it even had happened.
Yeah, I think Tom's pretty used to it, though. I mean, this is a guy who's really lived in the spotlight for years. Ever since he was with Bridget Moynihan and then Gisele Bündchen. I mean, this is somebody who's used to it. I do agree that I think he was sort of put through a lot of stress that I don't think he should have been put through. I mean, personally, and this is just my opinion, there have been multiple other quarterbacks who have admitted to deflating footballs or liking their footballs a certain way. I don't think that when other teams had these issues happen to them, quite as much of a fuss was made about it. I mean, we saw with the Vikings and Panthers when it happened. No one really cared. They just got warned. So I definitely do think there is an element of gamesmanship and also an element of, as we talked about earlier, pride that went into this entire Deflategate thing. But it is what it is, and I think we can all agree, although I don't know your personal opinions on Commissioner Roger Goodell, that anything that makes him look more foolish is, at the very least, it's more entertaining for us. So I'm totally fine with how things ended up.
Yeah, I do think it's that, and that maybe that's what this really is about, is whether or not Goodell needs to, step down as the commissioner. He's been the commissioner a long time. He's a very powerful man has made a lot of money at it, and it does feel at times like he thinks it's more of a dictatorship than a democracy when it comes to the NFL. I mean, I respect that they've still got the game, the sport intact with the salary cap, and I don't want to see the NFL start, become like NBA basketball or baseball, where it's half the teams are always good because they buy their teams, and the other half of the teams are rarely good. They do keep a good competitive balance, but it does just seem, in terms of the league and with everything that's starting to unfold, it might just be time for Roger Goodell to step aside to just infuse everything and get back to playing football.
The crazy thing for me is I really do believe that, the previous commissioner was Paul Tagliabue, and I think that really Roger Goodell and Paul Tagliabue really should have just switched eras, because Tagliabue was definitely, in terms of like being a more progressively minded in terms of like changing some elements of the game, I think Tagliabue sort of had that over Goodell. And I think Goodell definitely harkens back to that more hard-nosed respect. And I also think Goodell, while is a very good scapegoat, and that's part of his job, so he does well at that, I don't think that he is the most relatable person. I think Paul Tagliabue had sort of a human element that Goodell didn't. So we'll see what happens. I mean, I don't expect Goodell to be forced to resign anytime soon, but we are seeing, and I was talking about this with a reporter recently, we are going to begin to see a major, major shift in who is going to play football, which youths are going to play football. I think it's going to shift to those who really do need football as an escape, because you're going to see more and more parents who have options not let their children play football. And I do think we're going to see a very different NFL in 15, 20 years. And part of it's going to be what Goodell brought to the table and how he dealt with CTE, how he dealt with domestic violence even, because I think parents definitely have a major reaction to what's been going on there. And just in general, how he's really dealt with a lot of these tough situations where the NFL hasn't moved as swiftly as many other people wanted them to, including other owners.
Yeah, I can see where you're going there, Ethan. So, Mosquito escaped, so I'm just gonna have to tough it out. What have we talked about regarding the game already, Chad?
We did a quick synopsis, and what I had asked Ethan is kind of what he expected that the Patriots were going to be concerned about with the Dolphins, because obviously we've been looking at the other way, and we're mentioning, how do you even try to slow down Brady in that offense, and how do you attack their defense? And what Ethan had touched on was obviously they're concerned about the front four. That New England has had a rash of injuries on their offensive line, and so that obviously when you have Ndamukong Suh and Cameron Wake and Olivier Vernon and those guys in there, they got to probably be worried about keeping Tom Brady protected. That was a big thing. And then he had mentioned they're trying to improve tackling on defense, which that's always seems to be something we're always trying to do as well. Is how do you get tackling fundamentals down better? But so they had mentioned Jarvis Landry, obviously, because if you watch film on him, he's just a monster at breaking tackles and slipping tackles. So that's where. Then I just jumped over because you probably had heard in the news that the NFL is trying to change its stance in court to. They're basically, because the judge wanted to throw out that Tom Brady had general knowledge, they're trying to say that he knew that it had happened now, and it's all legal jargon. But I was just making the point I'm fed up with the whole thing in the courtroom, and I think that the Patriots did get punished, and I think Brady should have served a game or two, but it should just be done at this point. It's not doing anybody any good anymore.
Yep. Okay. Thank you for stepping in for me, Chad, while I dealt with my little issue. So, Ethan, you guys apparently touched on it already, but I want to ask you really, real quick, because this has something to do with what happened last week. The New York Jets also having a very strong front four and a very potent defense. They seem to give the Patriots a run for their money, and it took some sort of miracle from Brady and Gronk in order to make it happen that you guys managed to win last week. So what exactly happened in that game that the Dolphins could probably look to emulate if they wanted to take you on Thursday?
I mean, to be honest, it was kind of funny because I was really scared about this game, the Jets game. I think the Jets are a really good team. I mean, you guys know Todd Bowles. He's a really good coach. And he had his team pretty well prepared. I actually think that the Patriots, even when they were losing, were outplaying the Jets. They dropped 10 passes in the game. Brandon LaFell dropped 4, including 3 potential first downs. And there are some major, major problems just execution-wise. The Patriots were not executing well on offense. I actually had the offensive line. They had a little bit of trouble early, but they ended up playing pretty well toward the end of the game, which was nice. But it was really the Patriots sort of exploiting the seams of the Jets' defense. Danny Amendola had some really, really good plays, sort of like converting some clutch third downs, making some phenomenal catches. Brady, his intermediate velocity, that's his wow trait to me at all times, his physical trait. He was zipping some passes in there. And, yeah, as you said, Gronk at the end of the game made some big plays. I mean, in reality, I think that even though the Patriots were down going into the fourth quarter, they really did outplay the Jets for most of the game, and Brady sort of was able to will his offense to make some plays to sort of close it out. On defense, Ryan Fitzpatrick played pretty well. I think the Patriots, as I said earlier, have some weaknesses in the back four. Malcolm Butler is a decent cornerback, but he's not amazing, and their other 2 cornerbacks are Logan Ryan, who's a really instinctive player but really slow, and Justin Coleman, who's a rookie free agent. So definitely those can be exploited. But I thought the run defense played pretty well. The line got good penetration for the most part. And they got a little bit unlucky with some bad penalty calls that sort of kept some Jets drives alive. But definitely, overall, I'd say the Patriots probably gave a B- performance, and they still were able to eventually out-execute the Jets. So I think overall I was pretty happy with the win. It was probably the best opponent the Patriots have played this year, and probably one of the worst games they played this year. But I think that they did enough to win, and it was a pretty worthwhile victory.
Do you think that the Dolphins are a step up from the New York Jets? Do you think they'll probably be the toughest opponent they've dealt with so far?
To be honest, I think the Jets are better than the Dolphins. Granted, I also think that the Dolphins are better than they showed earlier this season. But I do think, looking at the Jets, I mean, at the end of the day, the Jets have a really good running back, who the Patriots actually bottled up for most of the game. I think Chris Ivory is better than Lamar Miller. I think that the Jets' receiving corps is better than what the Dolphins bring to the table, even though Jarvis Landry is great. And I think the Jets' defense is just so good. I mean, Revis is a phenomenal quarterback, as you know. Cromartie's pretty good, and their safeties actually had a really good game. Marcus Gilchrist really has sort of come into his own in that system. Calvin Pryor making some huge strides. And the linebackers, I thought the linebackers are actually going to be the weakness of the Jets' defense. They played really, really well. Demario Davis had one of the best games I've ever seen him play. And David Harris is just a really clutch veteran. And the defensive line, of course, is pretty good. I think actually the Jets and Dolphins differ on the defensive line because the Jets strike me as more of an interior penetrating team, and the Dolphins have a little bit more of that edge presence with Wake and Vernon, and of course you got Sue as well. So I think in that respect the Dolphins might be a little bit better, but I do think from top to bottom, and then when you consider the coaching, because we don't really know that much about Campbell, and I think Bowles is a really, really good coach, I think the Jets are a little bit better at this point. No shade on the Dolphins because I think they'll get there. But the Jets really do seem like the fifth best team, at least in the AFC to me right now. They're very, very good.
That's actually pretty interesting to me because usually when people make evaluations, they kind of, and I can't believe I'm doing this again. I'm probably making a lot of people upset by now. I'm looking at the quarterback position, and people look at the quarterbacks, and I can't picture how Ryan Fitzpatrick can even get even close to what Ryan Tannehill is capable of, because Fitzpatrick, he just seems to me like he's one of those quarterbacks who you throw in there because you have absolutely nothing else to go with. And as far as I know, Geno Smith was going to be the starter until I don't even remember the dude's name anymore. He punched out his jaw and took him out for the first half or so of the season. So they actually probably got a better deal with Fitzpatrick, but the case being, neither of those quarterbacks are really all that great. Chris Ivory, I would say, is a bruiser, and I love seeing what he can do. But it's kind of a different situation where Lamar Miller is more of a speeder guy, and then you have to have holes open up for him, which is what Billy Turner and Mike Pouncey have been able to do for him these past couple of games. And I can see where you're coming from. Just from a raw talent perspective, if I had to choose a secondary, I would probably choose the Jets because you have Darrelle Revis and Cromartie and Skrine and all those guys. You have corners they have secondary players coming out of their ears, and the Dolphins have question marks with Jamar Taylor and Walt Aikens and all that. But I feel like that you're underestimating the Dolphins' wide receiver core as a whole, because it's not just Landry that you have to deal with. It's also Rashard Matthews, who's really showing out and proving Philbin wrong once again. I think what it is that everybody, the Patriots fans nowadays, they kind of just look at what Joe Philbin did and Joe Philbin this and Joe Philbin that. Maybe I'm wrong about this, but I don't think what it is that you're realizing is just how much Joe Philbin was holding this team back, because it seems to me that Dan Campbell all of a sudden is energizing this team to the point that we're seeing what the Dolphins could have been if Philbin had been gone all along. All the players are saying that it wasn't Philbin's fault and all that PC stuff that makes them look good, but in reality, every single bit of body language, everything they've said, minus going as far as to say it was Philbin's fault, everything they've said and done so far is pretty much saying, look, Joe Philbin was holding us back. Here we come because this is who we really are.
I will agree with you on one hand and disagree on the other. I think Philbin should have been fired last year. I don't think he was ever going to be a good coach. I think the entire situation for him was just a bad situation. I mean, I don't know if you realize this, but I think his final interview when he originally got the Miami job was like the day after his son was found dead in a ravine in some random hiking trip. Like, it started so negatively, got no time to deal with that. And I think that that's something that really did sort of eat away at him and distract him while he was coaching. And I mean, to me, just as an outsider, it was pretty clear that he wasn't going to be the long-term answer in Miami. I think Campbell, he's had two really good games against two really, really bad teams. I think Tennessee and Houston might be two of the 5 worst teams in football right now. But definitely the team looks reinvigorated, which is great. I think we'll see what happens with the Patriots for sure, because that'll be their biggest test to date, especially on a short week of preparation. And, on one hand, maybe the Patriots have less time to prepare, and that helps the Dolphins. On the other hand, maybe the Dolphins have less time to prepare, and that helps the Patriots because they can use their own athleticism against them. On the other hand, though, and this is my thing with Tannehill, and I was a fan of Tannehill coming out, and I sort of posed this question to you, I guess, because I was thinking about this while I was preparing for the show. One thing that I've really noticed is that with the best quarterbacks, they have one skill that even if you just are watching Red Zone and you hit like a random highlight play, it'll always jump out, or it jumps out more often than not. I'm familiar with Brady. It's the velocity, the intermediate velocity, where he can just like laser passes in there. With Rodgers, it's his ability to improvise. With Big Ben, it's his ability to shed tacklers in the pocket and to make plays happen. With Cam, to me, it's his ball placement. Peyton too. What do you think Tannehill's is? Because I'm a Tannehill fan, but I sort of expected that he'd be a little bit better right now in his career than he is. And, I mean, I don't know. I don't watch him every week, so I leave it to you to sort of like tell me what do you think is Tannehill's like best trait as a passer?
I would say which they haven't utilized a lot because they spent so much time working with him in the pocket, but it's getting him outside the pocket. And I think people underestimate how fast he is and how good of an athlete he is. And to me, I think you're going to see more of that. And what he's very, very capable of doing is putting a lot of pressure on linebackers because he's a very difficult guy for a linebacker to contain one-on-one. He's usually able to outrun the linebackers, and he throws on the run pretty well. And so I think that him on the move creates a whole new dimension for the Dolphins, and it forces a defense to play a lot differently if they're having to account for him on a consistent basis. And so obviously teams don't like to do that too much because you don't want to get your quarterback hurt. But I think in critical games like these games with the Patriots, that's exactly what you'll see them doing more with Tannehill is getting him outside the pocket and moving the football. And they may have him taking off in that game 5 or 6 times trying to run down the field with it. That would be my answer anyway.
And I would also bring up that Tannehill. I don't know if maybe this is more along the lines of obliviousness than anything else, but Tannehill seems to be able to keep cool under pressure. Something that even you, Ethan, I think would admit that when Brady starts running into a lot of pocket trouble, he starts to get a little tap dancing. He starts to maybe rush things a little bit. I think that's just something that we've seen in the past, that Brady starts to panic a little. I don't want to use the word panic, but he seems to get a little jumpy when there's a lot of pressure coming around him.
Yeah,
Tannehill go ahead.
sorry, yeah, I agree with you, but I gotta say this year he's actually been better about that. There were some plays in the Jets game where he just moved the pocket expertly. And I think it might have been like the knee issue. I think he was still a little bit scared about that, but he seems to really have gotten past that for the most part. But I definitely agree that that is something that maybe with some more outside pressure, it could definitely sort of come to pass. So that's a good observation.
Yeah, and for Tannehill, I would also say that his velocity isn't that bad either. I understand what you're saying about Brady. He does have some zip to his throws, especially those things in the slants and the intermediate passes. But Tannehill can do that too. What separates Brady from Tannehill is that Brady has a better vision for what he's doing with the football, and he has more confidence in his own abilities as well as usually as well as who he's throwing to. Because let's look at it like this. If you gave Tannehill somebody like Gronkowski, and I'm not even complaining about Jordan Cameron and Deion Sims, they're pretty good too. But if you gave Tannehill and Gronkowski, somebody who will catch the ball no matter what and then drag 4 defenders into the end zone with him and then spike the ball because he's that great, I don't know if Tannehill would be more willing to take chances. He is a conservative quarterback, that much I will admit. He's not the best in pocket presence, I will also admit that much. But I have always been of the mindset that you don't need your quarterback to be Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers, and I can't even say Peyton Manning anymore because Peyton Manning is not the elite quarterback he used to be, and neither is Drew Brees. At this point, really, there's only 2 truly indisputable elite quarterbacks in the NFL, and that's Brady and Aaron Rodgers. And even some would make the argument that Brady isn't even elite because most of the time he's just kind of throwing the ball to his receivers and letting them make plays, and he's not always doing these wow plays that Aaron Rodgers does. So in the end, what it comes down to is it's about execution. It's about making a team football because we all know that Tannehill's not going to be able to carry the team on his back the whole game like maybe a Tom Brady can, to the extent that all you have to do is give him the ball and let things happen. It needs to be a balanced offense. It needs to be a team game. And I've always been of the mindset that it should be a team game. Even Tom Brady, I believe that every single Super Bowl he's won, and correct me if I'm wrong, Ethan, that he's had a top 10 ranked defense and he's had a very excellent rushing attack backing him up.
I mean, I definitely agree with you that it's a team game for sure. I would disagree with people who don't think Tom Brady's elite because in the Jets game, I mean, in the Super Bowl itself, like the guy was down 10 in the fourth quarter, came back, got 14 points, and made some pretty impressive throws that I don't think every quarterback in the league could make.
Okay, sure, but just for the record, you know that if you really don't think that if Marshawn Lynch had gotten the 1 yard, that it would have won, right?
Yeah, but they only got down there on a lucky play anyway. I mean, it was like it was a little bit of it was a ball don't lie type of situation. So I really have no qualms about that. But either way, I mean, Brady did enough to win by that standard. Brady got a game-winning drive in all 5 Super Bowls. They only won 3 of them, but he got a game-winning drive in all 5. So that's why QB wins are sometimes silly. But getting back on track, yeah, no, I definitely think that like the fact that Brady's had help. I mean, I think Tannehill has had plenty of help as well. I think a lot of Super Bowl teams tend to have help, but I also think that it helps to have a really good quarterback who will open up the box and let running backs have more room to run. I mean, Brady won in 2001, 2003 with Antoine Smith as his running back. So I think it sort of works both ways.
And to an extent, it does. I'm not here to deny that having an elite quarterback is a major thing. That's what I was saying earlier in the show. Is that when I use the hashtag Magical QB World, it's not to say that it's not to undervalue the quarterback position. It's to illustrate when quarterbacks are getting either too much credit or too much blame for their struggles. Ryan Tannehill can be a good quarterback when his offensive line and his running game are functioning, which is the case for any quarterback. If you take away those two assets, it's very hard for any quarterback to make things happen unless your name is Aaron Rodgers or Tom Brady. So that means 2 out of 32 teams in the league might as well go home if they don't have some sort of balance. Phillip Rivers was the closest thing to carrying the team on his back as you even could, and even he failed in the end. He threw the ball 65 times. I don't know what else they could have expected from him, and he still lost the game, which only illustrates the fact that you need help. Otherwise, you're just not going to make it no matter how good you are.
Yeah, when you throw the ball 65 times, that to me means you've offensively failed with your game plan, and you're having to throw the ball continuously. But to me, it just depends how you define elite, I guess. If you're asking me if I think Tom Brady can slip 3 blitzing linebackers, run outside the pocket, and throw the ball 45 yards across the field and hit a guy, absolutely not. He's not physically able to do that. But if you define elite as extremely difficult and practically unstoppable, then Tom Brady is elite, because for almost 2 decades now he has practically been unstoppable in his ability to read defenses. And I think a lot of people, obviously Tom Brady's a huge aspect of it, but they don't realize how much work the Patriots put in to get the personnel they have. And right now Julian Edelman's getting a lot of phrases, but I will go out on a limb and say you could probably put Julian Edelman on the majority of other teams and he would just be another guy. Very similar to what Wes Welker was outside the Patriots. But when Wes Welker was in his prime on the Patriots, he was a lot like what you're seeing out of Edelman right now. He's just they get in sync so well, and I'm pretty confident that comes from off seasons and seasons of work that Brady and Edelman and Gronk and all the guys put in there. So when they line up on a line of scrimmage, not only does Brady read the defenses well, those receivers know exactly what routes they're running based on where everybody's lining up, and Brady knows exactly where he's throwing that football 95% of the time. When it's snapped, he already knows exactly where he's going with it. And so that's the Patriots in general, they have historically won with players that are smart, not the guys that are the fastest 40 times at the combine. And so that's always a challenge when you face them. So I think Brady is elite when it comes to that, and he absolutely he's up there with the greatest ever when it comes to he's at his best when the game is on the line. There's no doubt about it that Tom Brady does that very well. So I just hope that he's getting up there in age. So I'm hoping that he's about ready to retire, even though he keeps talking about playing into his 40s. So I think that's a little crazy. Like, he's not going to play till he's 50. That's insane. Well, no, but no, he's good. That's again, it's not the Dolphins that, and actually I think the Dolphins get as good against Brady as anybody. If you look over recent years, it's just they're very, very efficient against all teams, and they're extremely well coached. I think people overlook that, and it's interesting in this game and this matchup. If this was a Joe Philbin team, Bill Belichick would be like 4 chess moves ahead of them at kickoff already, and you already know that going into it. But
if it was a Joe Philbin game, I wouldn't even want to watch the game.
Well, in terms of the last thing in the world you want to be against a Bill Belichick coach team is predictable, because nobody in the business does better at taking away immediately what you do well. And
that's what Campbell said.
And then and Bill Belichick wants to make you adjust, and then when you adjust, he's going to adjust again, and it's just move, counter move, counter move. And to do that stuff, that means you have to have a team that's very smart and very well coached to be able to change schemes like a chess match during the game. But what I do think Miami has going for them is this is going to be a difficult game for the Patriots to prepare for because of Dan Campbell. They've played 2 games, and the games were so lopsided that you probably weren't seeing a lot of, Miami wasn't running a lot of these really exotic plays that were, amazing chalkboard plays that worked. They were just playing teams that were playing bad football, and they exploited them and played well, which is good. But it's going to be a whole different game against the Patriots. I'm hoping Dan Campbell has got some plays coming out that are going to feature some things the Patriots aren't going to be able to prepare for, that they're going to have to adjust for in game. And with some players like a Devontae Parker, where Miami hasn't been featuring them, if they can come out with some plays designed to him, I think you can take the Patriots off guard a little bit, at least early on in that game, and get some points, and that makes it a much more manageable game than if you're down 14 points and suddenly forced to be one-dimensional again. So that, to me, those are going to be critical aspects of that game.
Yeah, I totally agree. Totally agree.
Yeah.
But one other thing I just have to point out, since we're none of us in that division now, how bad is the AFC South really? I mean, you're talking about the magical QB world, Lewis, but I honestly think the Dolphins probably would have won the division like 2 or 3 times in the last 6 or 7 years. That's just you look at the Colts, and it's just like, I don't think the Colts are better probably than any team in the AFC. Obviously, they're not better than the Patriots, but I don't think the Colts are significantly better than the Jets, Dolphins, or Bills whatsoever. They've just had, like, year in and year out, 2 or 3 of the worst teams in football in their division.
I mean, honestly, I think that's one of the things that maybe, when you go against the best of the best, you really have to up your game. And, I mean, the AFC East is a really good division. Even the Bills are pretty good. I know that they didn't look good in London, but they also started E.J. Manuel at quarterback. So I definitely think, looking at the AFC South, I mean, I'm a big Mariota fan. I think he's going to be okay. He looked awful against the Dolphins from the game I watched. I think part of that's because that offensive line is horrible. It is really, really bad. And he got injured, and that totally took him out of sync. But I do think eventually he'll be good. And actually, the Bortles has been pretty good this year. I mean, he's been inconsistent. He's made some pretty... He, is good for 1 or 2 bad throws a game that are just really bad. And he's not quite good enough to have those offset all the good throws he makes yet. But the potential's there for him to be better than I thought he was going to be. I think he actually could end up being a better long-term quarterback than I had originally expected. And then Houston is a total mess. I mean, with the Ryan Mallett stuff, I mean, that's a total cluster. And then Indianapolis, I mean, I was joking about it on Twitter, but are we sure that Andrew Luck deserves a contract extension? Because he looks really bad this year, and he still is the kind of quarterback who is a very high variance quarterback, and I'm not totally sure that he long term is going to be an amazing quarterback in the NFL. I think he's like Phillip Rivers good, but I'm not sure that Indy's ever going to win a Super Bowl with him.
Yeah, I taken so much heat over that the last couple years, and because he's been such a golden boy the last couple years with Andrew Luck in Indianapolis, and I've been saying early on it was RG3, he was RG3 and Andrew Luck, and I just thought, I just don't think those guys, and Colin Kaepernick's another one, I just don't think those guys are any better than anybody else, like Andy Dalton or Ryan Tannehill. There are all these guys that are in the middle right now that are they're young and they're trying to improve their game, but I didn't feel like Andrew Luck was any better than any of those other guys, and now as, we've progressed a few years further, he's been playing inferior opponents relative to many quarterbacks, and he's on a team right now. The Indianapolis Colts team just isn't that good. They don't have a great defense. They don't have a great line. They don't have a great running back. And obviously Andrew Luck can't be Aaron Rodgers and just carry a team on his shoulders and just win despite whoever is on his team. And it does make you really wonder. It's like, I'm not so sure Andrew Luck is the next Peyton Manning there. You know what I mean? He's not that level of quarterback.
Here's the thing about Luck for me, and I don't want to diss him too much because he had an amazing first couple of years in the league. I mean, he made some great comebacks. I mean, remember the Chiefs game? He's a really, really good quarterback, and he's beaten good teams. My issue with him is that I think that the book is out on Andrew Luck. You have to blitz him, and then he will make bad passes. And, I mean, the Patriots have used that formula every time they've played him, and they, other than 2 weeks ago, where Luck basically threw everything short. I don't think he threw a single pass over 15 yards because his arm is either shot or the game plan was just to throw short the entire time because they're scared of Jamie Collins. I mean, if you blitz him, he will make a bad pass and you can get an interception because he does tend to flutter passes and he tends to rush passes when he's blitzed. So, I mean, he's got to get better at that, and maybe that's something that he can learn and improve on, but I'm not sure that we can crown him right yet because he still has a long way to go before he can even. I don't think he's better than Cam Newton right now.
That's not even a contest. Cam Newton's as close to elite as you can get without.
Well, yeah, and I'm with Ethan. I'm not dishing Luck. I think he's a good quarterback. He's in the middle of the pack. With the names I'm throwing out there, he's with Ryan Tannehill, Andy Dalton, in that range of quarterbacks where
he's better than Dalton.
Bad quarterback. I don't know that he is. I mean, he might
Dalton's
have
gotten better this year. To be fair to Dalton, he's gotten better this year. I'm pretty impressed.
Yeah, and I don't know who the next rounds of quarterback. Now, to me, if you're talking the top quarterbacks, a lot of people were throwing Luck in that category, but the quarterbacks people don't say much. I think Ben Roethlisberger is a very good quarterback, and Drew Brees is still very good. Obviously, Brady's still very good, and Aaron Rodgers. To me, those are your top level quarterbacks, and I don't think that Andrew Luck really belongs in that category, and nor does Ryan Tannehill, because to me, that to get in that category, you got to be winning, playoff games in the fourth quarter on the final drive, or winning the championship game in the fourth quarter on the final. You got to do things that are under extreme pressure and perform. And to me, Andrew Luck's had a lot handed to him. That doesn't mean he's not going to be a good quarterback, but again, I think you could have taken the Bills, the Jets, or the Dolphins and thrown them over into the AFC South, and they probably would have won the division 3 or 4 times over the last 8 years. That's my belief.
And it's a difficult situation to analyze, really, because again, we talk about quarterbacks, we talk about team. It really does depend on the situation. For a team like the Patriots, who have a Tom Brady, they usually manage to find ways to overcome the other obstacles because they have an elite quarterback. And, I mean, good for Brady that he deserves the credit for the Patriots being good, along with that offensive line, because, again, to be fair, without the O-line, Ethan, I have to say this, and I don't know if you're going to agree with me or not, but in all of my life watching football, I have never seen a quarterback more protected with a better offensive line. I call it the Great Wall of Foxborough. I have never seen a quarterback who has had a better offensive line over the course of his career than Tom Brady.
I mean, I don't know if I'll say ever, but the Patriots the Patriots allocate resources and coaching. I mean, to me, I think that the most important position in terms of coaching a position is the offensive line coach. Because really what that is just taking large men and teaching them how to move correctly and block correctly. And I really do think that is the most teaching-oriented position. And the Patriots have been lucky where they had Scarnecchia, who was an amazing offensive line coordinator, and then this new guy, I don't know how to pronounce his name. He goes by Googe. I think he was on the Giants back in the day. But he also, even when he was on the Giants, he was the Giants OL coach when they won Super Bowls. So they just know that they have to allocate resources to that position. And even this year, I mean, Solder's out for the season. You got Vollmer kicking over to the left side. Cameron Fleming, who's a random 5th-round pick who they actually cut and then brought back, is the right tackle right now. And then you have 3 rookies on the interior. And they really didn't do that badly against the Jets last week. They didn't do horribly against the Cowboys either. So I mean, they're not amazing right now, but maybe I agree with you that normally the Patriots definitely know how to allocate resources to making sure the line is good, because they also know that if your quarterback isn't protected, he's not going to be able to make plays for you.
And that's the difference. That's one of the hugest differences between Tannehill and Brady, because up until last year, while Albert was playing, and later on, and now that Albert is back, and Dan Campbell has inserted this more physical play style, Ryan Tannehill has never had a real offensive line whatsoever to speak of, which is really dumb considering that Joe Philbin's supposed claim to fame was that he was an offensive line coach. That just seems like a joke to me.
Yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, again, as we were saying for instance here, the scheme has a lot to do with it. When the defenses know you're going to pass, you can take Tom Brady and the Patriots, and if they came into a game and the defense knew all game long they were going to do nothing but throw, Tom Brady's not going to do near as well as when he has a balanced running game to work out of to execute his plays with. So it's just tough sledding when you make your team one-dimensional. And some teams through history maybe have gotten away with it, like the Rams. When they were the greatest show on turf, they threw the ball pretty much all game long. But I mean, they obviously had Kurt Warner and elite skill players, and they played a lot of their games indoors. And so when you get into that mindset, it's hard to be successful in the AFC East if you can't run the football when it starts to get cold and windy. I mean, that's just the reality of it. Or have short passing, the games that like the Patriots have. So I think I do think that Tannehill is improving, and I do disagree on Ethan. I do think the Dolphins overall are a little bit better team than the Jets, primarily because of the quarterback position. I don't think Fitzpatrick's that good of a quarterback.
And because Campbell is taking over the team, Chad, because if it was still Philbin, I'd say the Jets were better.
Of course. I mean, obviously the Dolphins lost to the Jets, so as the Bill Parcells you are, what your record says you are, they did lose to the Jets. And I don't think that the Jets are a bad team, but I do think Miami's somewhere, in that range in this game against the Patriots. If they were able to pull off that upset and beat the Patriots, I think that would clearly establish them as the number 2 team right now in the AFC East. And I think Buffalo, despite being loaded with talent, I think they're on the verge of implosion right now. They're kind of a hot mess. I mean, they're taking a lot of heat because they traded Cassell off. Not that he looked great on the Cowboys, but EJ Manuel he's a long ways away from being able to read defenses properly and move the ball where they need to. And I'm not even that sold at all on Taylor either. I know he's had some decent games for Buffalo, but Sammy Watkins is having a lot of trouble staying healthy. As with Sammy Watkins having trouble staying healthy, you've got Percy Harvin trying to retire and throwing his fits. And I don't know. Which isn't uncommon with a Rex Ryan team. Because he loves to be very loud and boisterous coming into games to try to get into the heads of the opponents. But I don't know. My prediction right now is it won't shock me at all if you see Buffalo finish last in the division this year because of they're that close to having a lot of being in a situation like the Texans are in where there's just so much turmoil that it distracts from them being able to play well. So hopefully Miami's past that. We've had plenty of our own turmoil in Miami with the coaching changes and everything. And even if we don't beat the Patriots, I expect it to be another rival AFC East hard-fought game. And guys, I know this is scary, but I'm kind of expecting there's gonna be some injuries in this game because Campbell has his team coached right now to really play on the edge of control. And as I was mentioning earlier, when you play the Patriots, a lot of teams lose to the Patriots after playing 55 minutes of really good football, and the last 5 minutes of the game is when they lose to the Patriots. And so the Patriots almost always play 60 minutes of high-level, intense football. And so I think this game is going to be so hard fought between the players. You're going to see some really hard tackling. You're going to see a really physical football game. That's what Dan Campbell's going to want to do. And especially with the Patriots having some offensive line issues, like I said, I don't expect the Patriots to be dropping Tom Brady back in deep drops and looking for him to throw the ball way down the field. That's just asking him to get exploded by Sue and Wake. So they're going to be a little bit more dink and dunk, let Tom Brady and Edelman and Gronk, attack that Dolphins defense. And that means there's going to be guys catching balls in traffic. The Patriots are going to be trying to run the football. and you're going to see some heavy hitting. I mean, that's something you haven't seen out of the Dolphins or expect, but that's really who they are right now with Campbell, is a team that comes in that's going to kind of make it a dogfight, make it very physical, and you're going to see a much more intense game than you've seen the last 2 weeks out of the Dolphins, because, I mean, to be honest, the Texans and Titans pretty much laid down after the second quarter, and the Patriots, if I don't know if we beat them or not, but I don't expect them to lay down. I will say that.
I mean, I don't want to like say anything a little bit too real right now, but really, from everything I've read, everything I've seen about Dan Campbell, is this dude just Rex Ryan 2.0? Because I have a feeling that's exactly how the Patriots are going to play him, like very similar to Rex Ryan.
No, he's not,
in
Ethan.
terms of the mentality he's bringing to the table.
Ethan, I'm going to tell you why he's not. Because unlike Rex, Dan Campbell is willing to put the team in other people's hands. He's not willing to say that it's going to be my way or the highway. What makes Rex different from Dan Campbell is that Rex wants things done his way, his ego, his pride. It's all about Rex, and he is going to say stupid things to get everybody riled up, and he's going to make sure that he is in the spotlight no matter what. Dan Campbell, while fiery in his own sense, is not somebody who you can look at and say, this guy is a maniac. Dan Campbell is a very, very smart individual. I had the privilege of speaking to him at Web Weekend earlier on Friday, and this man just oozes intelligence. This man knows what he's talking about. He's not somebody who's just another loudmouth who's Rex Ryan 2.0. He knows his weaknesses. He knows what he wants to do, and he's letting his coordinators, who, by the way, are actually a lot better than advertised, because I think Philbin was more Rex Ryan than Dan Campbell, because Philbin also had an ego and wanted things done his way, and it was his way or the highway, and we're going to sink or swim with my way and sort of mentality. Campbell is willing to make adjustments. He's willing to take his players and do what they do best. He knows them. He relates to them. And that's what makes Campbell so much better as a coach. I don't know if he doesn't know the X's and O's part of it. I will gladly admit that much. That's what Darren Rizzi is there for. That's what Bill Lazor is there for. That's what Lou Anarumo is there for, to take care of that stuff. Campbell knows how to keep his team focused. He knows how to make sure that he knows what they need when they need. He's not a genius like Belichick, but what he can do is make sure that his team is focused. Rex Ryan has shown that he can do the exact opposite.
No,
yeah,
you know what?
I mean, to jump in there with you, Lewis. I don't think that he's anywhere like. To me, Rex. I really dislike Rex Ryan, and I'll tell you, I was biting my fingernails hoping that when Philbin I thought Philbin was going to get fired at the end of last year, and I was really worried they were going to bring Rex Ryan over to Miami. And I think Rex Ryan is he's so defensive minded. He keeps things very simplistic on offense. To me, that's Rex Ryan, and he's extremely boisterous. And I mean, you watch Rex Ryan's conferences and stuff that he holds. When he's meeting with the media, to me, he intentionally is always trying to get in the heads of his own players and the other team's players. So he's saying things that do that. And that's not, if you listen to Dan Campbell's press conference, he was he was saying that, it's difficult for anybody to stop Brady. And he basically said Bill Belichick's one of the greatest coaches that's ever played the game. And he knows he's up against it, with what the Patriots bring to the table. And I'm no set from accomplishment standpoint comparing him, but if I were to say a personality that Dan Campbell reminds me most of, it is Bill Cowher, the old coach from the Steelers, where it is a player's coach, but he really preaches an intense style of football. And I can tell you that for the Patriots, the Dolphins will be playing an attack-style football. They're going to be trying to hit Brady. It won't surprise me if they get a few late hits. They've been getting them in their last few games. And the idea being is Dan Campbell's going to want to try to knock Tom Brady down just to try to get his timing off, to try to keep him a little uncomfortable in the pocket. And you're going to see a lot of heavy hitting. I think you're probably going to see some fights and some scuffles. And whether or not people agree with that, Dan Campbell puts his team on edge to play in those games. Now, I think this is going to be a whole different ball game for Dan Campbell, because the Patriots my concern is they're going to probably try to use that against them. So you're going to probably see the Patriots employ things like screens and other play sets, and watch Bill Belichick try to do some counter moves on if Miami's overplaying, I guess is the best way to say it. If they're playing too aggressive, if they're blitzing too much, taking too many gambles, then the Patriots are going to try to burn them. But I really, guys, it's going to be a very physical football game because the Patriots will play physical football. They would much rather have teams just sit back in zones and let Brady run down the field and just pick them apart. But if you push it, the Patriots, they're a physical football team too, and that you're going to see two teams that really get after each other. It's going to be a fun game to watch Thursday night. I'm very confident of that.
I think both of you brought up really good points. I was talking more from a stylistic perspective. I think Luis was completely right. And this is a pet peeve of mine for sure, like that the best coordinator, sometimes the best head coach, it's a completely different skill set. Because, Rex Ryan may be a great defensive coordinator, but being a head coach, you have to manage personalities. You have to sort of get out in front of that. And in that sense, I don't know that much of Dan Campbell, but if he's better than Rex Ryan in that, I think that'll definitely serve him really well.
Dan Campbell is a very smart man, and the biggest reason I say that is not because of his football knowledge. It's not because of his ability to make strategies. It's not because of anything like that. It's because he knows where he needs to step back and say, guys, take it away. And that, I think, is more important than anything else. Head coach, to me, is somebody who can keep the players focused and make sure that they're ready to go on Sunday. And not even in the sense of strategy, it's just in mindset. Tony Sparano, he was not a football genius, but you know what? The one year he had a good quarterback, and granted, Tom Brady was hurt that year, but the Dolphins still went 10-6 and went from 1-11 to 10-6 in 1 year with a good quarterback, and he was able to keep his players focused. Was he a genius? No. But Campbell even has one up on him because as a player himself for 10 years, he knows what players go through. He knows how it feels. He knows what it's going through. And it's not like he's the youngest head coach in the league right now. It wasn't that long ago that Campbell was playing, so it's not like he's an old fuddy-duddy who was playing 20 years ago and it's outdated. He's still pretty much relevant to the league, and he could strap up the pads and play now if he really wanted to.
Yeah, no, I think from a standpoint of having the team motivated, he's definitely doing well at that, and I agree listening to him talk Lewis. He's very smart, but this is going to be a challenge. I mean, he's still a rookie. This isn't a guy that's had a head coaching experience, and so again, Belichick is going to present something. He's going to force Dan Campbell to stop it, and then he's going to adjust. He's going to do it. He's going to adjust. And so this is going to be, I think, a first real test because Miami didn't have to adjust their last. I mean, literally, Miami just ran their base plays, and the other teams just were so bad that Miami's playmakers did well against them. And so I guarantee that if Jarvis Landry's, starting that game off with 3 or 4 catches and doing some dynamic stuff, Bill Belichick will take away Jarvis Landry and make them beat them with some other players. Now, Miami has the personnel to do it, but it's going to be interesting because of these new personnel. Will our defense adjust correctly when the Patriots' offense adjusts? And that's why I'm excited to see this game because this is kind of like having a rookie quarterback in a sense that's had 2 good games right out of the gate, but now you're playing a really good football team. And you wanted to see how they perform against that high-level competition. And this is really the first time Dan Campbell and the new staff and really the new outlook of the team is going to get challenged. And it's going to be interesting to see how they respond.
And that's what we're going to be looking for. So we've been going for about 2 hours. I'm exhausted. I've been eaten alive already, and that's driving me absolutely insane. So, Ethan, I'd like to thank you for joining us, man. I really appreciate you coming on and talking some Dolphins and Patriots football with us. We had some interesting discussions, I think, and this really what it does is illustrates how fans of different teams kind of look at the NFL in a different way. And I hope that our discussions with you have taught you a little more insight on what it is that Dan Campbell brings to the table. I mean, you thought he was a Rex Ryan clone, and really we as Dolphins fans don't see that in the slightest. What we see is a man who knows how to keep his players focused and keeps them motivated in the correct way. It's going to be a tough game for sure. I don't expect if I'm being perfectly honest, I don't expect the Dolphins to win, but I can promise you this, they will give you a battle like you wouldn't believe.
Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah,
And thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure.
You have
But
a Twitter or anything, Ethan, for people to follow?
Oh, yeah, if you want to yell at me during the game this week, you could follow me at Ethan, ETHAN, I'm happy to take your abuse.
It's pretty civil. The Patriots.
I hope so. I'm very civil.
We can't have the Jets fan on here. That's what we never can get on, are the Jets. So.
I'm very civil on Twitter.
You're also a gamer, Ethan, so that's a plus in my book.
Yeah, play video games are cool.
Yeah, nobody got your little Undertale joke.
No, well, you know what? The Undertale joke will continue to be played. I'm actually replaying it right now because I want to see how many endings I can get. So we will see. But no, thanks for having me on, and hopefully there won't be too many injuries this week because the Patriots are already really injured, and I don't want any more injuries. So.
Well, I'm not hoping for them. I just usually when the games get really physical, that's when people get hurt. I'm not suggesting whatsoever either to be targeting people, but I think there's going to be some real heavy hitting. That's what I'm expecting.
I definitely do think, though, regarding Campbell, this is his first big challenge, and we'll see how he deals with it going into the game and then also how he deals with it after the game. So it'll be interesting to see how he sort of takes his first challenge against the Patriots as the Dolphins coach.
Yep, sure will. So thanks, Ethan. Really glad to have you on, and we're going to wrap this show up now. So thank you everybody for joining us. I want to make a minor correction that I said in the first half of the show, though. We actually won a Webby for most informative site, not best news content. That was actually another website, so sorry. Anyway, so thank you guys for joining us. We really appreciate you coming on to listen to us, and we'll see you all next week, where hopefully the Dolphins will come away with a victory against the New England Patriots, and we'll see you all next time.
Fins up.